Hi everyone, we're coming up to the festival of Sukkot, Zman Simchosenu, the time of our joy. After Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, we enter the Sukkah and take the Arba Minim, the four species. I thought I would share with you some of the laws, practices and customs to do with Sukkot. And obviously there are a myriad of technical details about all of these things, and we don't have time for all of them. But I thought I'd give you a glimpse into some of them, some of the more widespread major points. So, for the first question, can you build a sukkah anywhere? So, the sukkah must be built underneath the sky. We're standing or we're sitting in a sukkah beneath the heavens. So, one shouldn't build a sukkah under a roof or under an overhanging balcony or a tree or some sort of interposition, an intervening object between the heavens and the sukkah. So that's a major part of the sukkah. What is the minimum size of the sukkah? Well, 70 cm by 70 cm is the real minimum. Like the tiniest amount of space, you get a small table in there. But most sukkahs are much bigger than that. And the schach. The schach is the major part of the sukkah. You can tell from the etymology of sukkah, it relates to sechach. The materials that are kosher for sechach have three qualities. Number one, they're vegetation. Two, they're detached from the ground, so not like an overhanging tree that you would just pin down on top of your sukkah. It has to be detached from the ground. And the type of material has to be incapable of becoming tameh, which is a spiritual condition of impurity. Of course, there are many laws to do with what exactly is that. But there are certain objects that one can't use. So, but we usually use bamboo matting for ours, so you can easily put them away and spread them out. Works very well for schach, and schach should provide more shade than sunlight within the sukkah. So if you've got big gaps with lots of sunlight coming through, that's a problem. It should be a majority of shade in the sukkah and shouldn't be so sparse to allow a majority of sunlight in. Now in England, we have a very windy autumn. So often people ask, may I tie down the sechach to the sukkah to stop it blowing away, or nail it down? Nail the schach down to the wooden supports, for example. So the answer is ideally, string or nails should not be used as a primary support for schach. If a person is afraid that the schach might blow away or slide off in a normal wind, they should just place heavy planks of wood on top of the schach, because that would be considered kosher schach. And then the planks or branches may be tied or nailed down, since the string or nails would then be considered a secondary support. Or you could tie down the schach with vegetation, such as palm leaves or twigs. So regarding if you were to put planks of wood on top of the schach, then they according to some opinions, they should be narrow planks of narrower than 8 centimeters, preferably narrower than 5 centimeters. So, but if the schach would be not blown away except in an unusually strong wind, it may be tied down even with string, because it's pretty stable there. It's just if an exceptionally strong gust of wind would come along, it might move. In that case, you can tie it down with string, because the string isn't a primary support. It's going to only be effective in extreme circumstances. Okay, so decorating the sukkah. We often find our sukkahs very much decorated, and that's the proper way, because all mitzvahs should be made beautiful. And this is especially true for the sukkah because the sukkah is yeshvu ka'in taduru, that we are dwelling the sukkah as we would dwell in our house. So we would make our house look beautiful, and the sukkah becomes our house for the week. So it's very praiseworthy to decorate the sukkah. Okay, eating in the sukkah. So strictly speaking, only meals must be eaten in the sukkah, but not snacks or drinks. But we try to eat or drink as much as we can in the sukkah. A meal is a piece of bread, and even when accompanied by other foods. And the truth is, so the meals of a bread meal must be eaten in the sukkah. What about mazonot, biscuits, cake, pasta, those types of things? So there are different opinions about this, but the widespread practice is to be strict and treat it like bread. So we eat our biscuits in the sukkah, ideally. So, continuing with the sukkah, is a person obligated to sleep in the sukkah? Well, during the week of Sukkot, the sukkah is considered one's home. And since eating and sleeping are the primary activities we do at home, those are the things we're meant to do in the sukkah. So, sleeping in the sukkah in Britain is quite a challenge. So we are fortunate to have exceptions to the rule. If sleeping in the sukkah would cause you discomfort because of the cold weather or any other reason, that it could be uncomfortable to be outside, maybe there's noise, etc., then you're not required to sleep in the sukkah. Similarly, if one's spouse would be upset if you were in the sukkah, then that's also a reason to have a conversation. But it is a mitzvah to sleep in the sukkah. So if one is in a nice setting, or if you've got heating in there, or if it's secure and it's a very nice place to be, then that's a great mitzvah to do. Okay, the first night of Sukkot is different from all the other nights because the Torah tells us that the first night of the festival is parallel to the first night of Passover, of Pesach, and just like there is on the first night of Pesach, that's the night where there's a commandment to go ahead and eat matzah, so too on Sukkot there is an obligation to actively go into the sukkah and have a meal there and have bread there. Whereas for the rest of the Yom Tov, for the rest of the Chag, if you're eating, then you go in the sukkah. But you don't have to go and have a bread meal. There's no obligation to have the bread meal in the sukkah apart from the first evening. And obviously on the second day of Yom Tov, there's a rabbinic requirement to do so as well, because the second day of Yom Tov is rabbinic and the first one is Torah based. The blessing in the sukkah is Baruch Atah Hashem, blessed are you Hashem, Elokeinu melech haolam, our God, King of the universe, Asher kadeshanu b'mitzvosov v'tzivanu leishev b'sukkah, who sanctified us with His commandments and commanded us to dwell in the sukkah. So when do you say this blessing? So not just by going in the sukkah. The reason that when we say this blessing is when we eat mazonot or bread, things like that. So if you were going to have a biscuit, then you make the blessing. But if you're just having a shot of whiskey or a glass of water, then there is no blessing on the sukkah, just the blessing on the food. The reason for that is because although if a person fulfills a Torah mitzvah every moment that you are inside the sukkah, the sages ruled that the blessing should only be recited for the most significant activity, which is eating. So even sleeping, there is no blessing in the sukkah, just for the eating bit. But so the blessing you say on the eating, the mitzvah of sleeping in there would be included in that blessing. Now, Rain. This is a classic. How much rain affects the mitzvah of Sukkah? So a person should consider the Sukkah their house during the festival, and live in the Sukkah like you'd live in a house. But if there was rain coming through your front room, you'd probably move. So if you are distressed being in the Sukkah because of the rain, then one should leave. So if rain is coming through the schach into the Sukkah, that you'd leave the room if that were happening in your living room, then you should leave the Sukkah if it's raining. And there are lots more questions to do with what happens when it rains, especially for the first night, and making sure we have some bread in the Sukkah when the Sukkah is pleasant to be in. Also, if one is uncomfortable, if one is ill, and if one is travelling, there are exceptions to the mitzvah of the Sukkah. Now, when it comes to women, again, the Sukkah, the mitzvah of eating, living, sleeping in a Sukkah, is a time-bound positive mitzvah, meaning it is a thou shalt, and it's limited to time. So it's only during Sukkot when this mitzvah applies, and therefore women are exempt. They don't have to eat in the Sukkah, sleep in the Sukkah, but nevertheless there is a custom for them to do so whenever possible, and to say the blessing as well. The arba minim, the 4 species. The arba minim are very significant. You have first of all the esrog, which is like the citrus fruit, which has taste and fragrance, which represents Jews who possess Torah knowledge and good deeds. And then you have the lulav, the palm, the fruit of which has taste but no fragrance. That represents Jews who have Torah knowledge but lack good deeds. Then you've got the hadassim, the myrtle leaves, which has a fragrance but no taste, which represents Jews who have good deeds but lack Torah knowledge. And then you have the arova, the willow leaves, which have neither taste nor fragrance, who represent the Jews who don't have the knowledge or the action. And then we bind them together, signifying unity between all aspects of the Jewish people. No matter what you know, no matter how committed you are, we are all in this together. There are many other significant symbolisms within the arba minim. So one should, if one hasn't already, buy their arba minim and get ready for the mitzvah of shaking the lulav and esrog together, the 4 species together, which we will do on Sunday. We don't shake the 4 species on Shabbos. So the first day of Yom Tov this year is on Shabbat, so we won't be using them then, but on Sunday we will. So the idea of Sukkot is to be happy. Zman Simchasenu is a very trying time for us at the moment in the middle of this pandemic with the various restrictions in place. But we as Jews have a mitzvah, thou shalt be happy. This is the time of our Simcha v'samachta b'chagecha, says the Torah, which means you shall be joyous on your festival. So it's time to forget our troubles and to put our discomforts to one side and to try as much as we can to be joyous. I wish you all Chag Sameach.